Aloha, and how's it? Welcome to Mondays with Mindy. Today we are talking about the importance of purpose in helping individuals, teams, and organizations to fulfill their true growth potential. And as you can see, I'm not alone today. I have a very special guest with me today, Mark Mears. He's the author of The Purposeful Growth Revolution, an author, public speaker, consultant, visionary business leader. He's also currently the Chief Growth Officer for Leaf Growth Ventures. I met Mark on LinkedIn last year. We had a few DMs. We hopped on for a virtual Zoom, and the rest is history. So, welcome, Mark. Would you also like to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit more about you and your work.
Well, thank you, Mindy, and it's a pleasure to join you today talking about my favorite subjects. It's a great way to start Mondays with Mindy, and I'm just so glad I met you, and you've been a fount of information and knowledge and wisdom for me that I can't possibly repay, but I'll try. Again, my name is Mark Mears, and I've had the pleasure of serving in a variety of marketing and executive management positions throughout my career. PepsiCo, Pizza Hut, Frito-Lay, McDonald's, JCPenney, NBC Universal, and the Cheesecake Factory, among others. And I've written this book to be the foundation for speaking, consulting, and curriculum of master classes that I'm working on right now, and really all designed to help people find purpose in, fulfilling their true growth potential. And we talk a lot about this idea of the Great Resignation. I choose to call it the Great Repurposing, because when I think about the word resign, Mindy, it's either people have quit altogether, or maybe worse yet, they have quit and stayed. Now, neither of those are very great to me. So I look at the Great Repurposing as an opportunity for us to kind of take a time out and really get introspective and determine what, or more importantly, who is most important in our lives, and align our purpose behind that who in our life, which I actually believe is more meaningful than our why. We've heard a lot of talk about start with why, and the whole Simon Sinek TED talk that he did years ago, which was brilliant, and several books later, it still rings true and resonates very well with me. But I got to thinking, as I do from time to time, that it's really not about starting with why. We need to start with who, and more importantly, Mindy, who we serve. Who we serve is more important than our why. Matter of fact, it often leads us to our why. But if you think about it like a four-circle Venn diagram, there's four categories of service as I see it. One is spiritual, one is relational, one is personal, and another is professional. So if you think about that Venn diagram, they're all intertwined, much like the seasons of nature. And the seasons in our life are all intertwined. We don't live in a linear world. It's all intertwined and revolving around purpose. What are we put on this earth to do? But more importantly, who were we meant to be? And when we can align those two things, now you've got purposeful growth that not only enriches your life, but your work. So we have this whole thing now called quiet quitting.
Yes,
as we're
tell
now
me.
living in this Zoom world where people are working remotely or not, and yet they're still getting paid, but you don't really know if their heart's in it. And I think that's really got to be frustrating for management, who is, trying to not just evolve, but revolve. And this is a revolution. What I call the Purposeful Growth Revolution is we're in the middle of a revolution. The world of work is changing on purpose. It was moving in this direction pre-COVID, by the way, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And now, millennials and zillennials and the Gen Z generations have been moving in this direction, but management finally is taking notice and saying, we're having a labor issue. The number one line item, by the way, on any P&L is traditionally labor or cost of goods, mostly associated with labor. So until the zombies or the robots take us away, we're still all, no matter what industry you're in, we're still all in the people business. And so if you don't have team members, and I hate the word employees or workers,
Yeah.
we're whole people. And that's why I say, look at those 4 categories of service. Professional is just one of them. We're whole people, but we bring all of us to the workplace. And that's what more people want, is to be comfortable being who they are, who God made them to be, and they want to be treated like a human being in the workplace. Is that so hard? I don't think so.
No, I don't think so either. And I think, yeah, there has been all this talk of quiet quitting and like what that looks like. And I think there has been such a big shift. And I agree with you. It also did start before COVID. I noticed like a huge shift. I was like involved in like making remote work cool. I was involved in a number of programs, and now it's like it's kind of everybody's been doing it or has a hybrid model or has shifted that direction and kind of tried to find their happy place. But I think it's not enough to have just remote work. It really does start with like what you were saying with the who. And I'm curious, like with starting with who versus starting with why, how is that process different?
Well, I think, and notice I said who you serve. And that's the
Yep.
important word. And not to get all spiritual on you, but Jesus came down not to be served, but to serve. So here's God who came down to earth as a man, and he didn't just come and rule with an iron fist. He met people where they were. He treated them with humility and service. And so when I
Yep.
think about servant leadership, and someone I've always tried to be, and probably failed more often than I succeeded, but I've always strived to be a servant leader and not give anybody on my team something I wouldn't be prepared to do myself, and humble myself to be able to treat them in a way that didn't come across like a title on a business card,
Yeah.
which is the old command and control style. And I believe that's what people are revolting against. So when you think about the word revolution, I don't throw it out there lightly as hyperbole. You think about
Mm.
the three definitions that I found for revolution. One, it's an uprising of the people.
Huh.
Okay. So two, it's a dramatic change in the status quo. Three, it's an object encircling another, right? All three of
Okay.
those definitions make perfect sense for what we're going through right now. It's the gig economy has sprung up. And by the way, if anyone can make remote working cool, it's you. Living in Hawaii with a surfboard in the background. And, I just want to be you when I grow up, Mindy. But there are so many people that have left the workforce.
Yeah.
So in January, the Sloan School of Management at MIT published a study of 34 million people that left the workforce during this last 2+ years of COVID, and asked them a really important question: why?
Yeah.
And the number one answer, by over 10x over number two, was toxic work environment.
Wow.
Compensation didn't come up till number 16 on the list. It was as if people were saying, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. And guess what? Now I don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
I can leave where I'm at if it's not serving me. I can go somewhere else, or I can start my own business. I could participate in the gig economy. I can do things that give me a sense of autonomy, freedom, and most of the benefits of being your own boss instead of working for a boss. Now, I never allowed my team members to call me a boss, because I said, look, I'm your leader. And that means I have to earn that every single day. A boss is simply a title on a business card that you could lord over someone if you wanted to. And some
Mm-hmm.
people do,
Yep.
unfortunately, hence the idea of toxic work environment. And people today, and I have 24, almost 25-year-old twin daughters, and I can tell you, as freshly minted zillennials, they view the world of work so much differently than we did in my day, where we did view life as linear. It was go to school, get good grades, get a job, get promoted, get married, have kids, get promoted or take on a new job and put away money for college or retirement. And then somewhere around 60 or 65, right off into the sunset.
Yeah.
Well, it just doesn't work that way. And I'm not sure it ever did, but we all clung to some sort of sense of order and lived in a certain way that now we look at, some of us who are on the older side of that equation, look back and go, why did I do that? Why? And which is why I think it's so important to leave a living legacy. Don't wait till you're gone to bequeath something. That's not what it means. It means to pay it backward along the journey and help
Mhm.
others along their growth journey. So any good manager can call balls and strikes, but the best ones are leaders that lead people to be the very best version of themselves, that help them achieve whatever goals they have for themselves. Instead of what can you do for me, it's what can I do for you? And that's what it really means for me to be a servant leader. And I found those to be the very best kind of leaders.
That is so good, and I'm going back in time to when I did work for bosses and actually in organizations, and for me, it was a toxic work environment, like, one of the places I was working at. The reason I did leave, it's just, like, I felt like there was no space for creativity. It was kind of very top-down leadership when, it was said that it was, "Oh, we're all working together. We're all kind of on a mission. Yeah, we wanna help you," but in reality, it was not that way. And so I feel like just feeling that stunted growth and not able to really blossom into the human that I wanted to be. And I wonder, looking back, if I had had somebody who had followed more of this type of process in that servant leadership, would I have stayed? Maybe
Yeah.
not, maybe, but that could have changed things for me and also given me, I think, just a better introduction, I think, to just work environments and what they should be like. So I'm curious, like when it comes to servant leadership, what are the telltale signs of a servant leader?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think it's in your daily interactions, in one-on-one and in team meetings. It's how you carry yourself. It's how you talk to people. And mostly, I think it's about listening.
Hmm.
And if you have someone come into your office, they're looking for help. You should give them your full attention. And I hate the word performance appraisal. It sounds
Oh.
like cattle or property, right? I tend to want to call it a purposeful growth plan. So
Ah,
if you
okay.
have purposeful growth intentions, my goal is to help you get there. So I want to listen to you. What lights you up? What do you love about your job? What do you wish would be different? What would you do if you were me? And if
Hmm.
you listen to the answers of those questions and then follow up, those are pretty telltale signs that you are there for what I call we growth versus me go. So a lot of people get into management positions and it's about me go, right? It's play off the word ego. And it's about, I worked hard to get to this position, by gosh, by golly, and you work for me, and we're going to accomplish these goals, but make no mistake, you work for me. And versus it's we growth. I had an interview when I was at Pizza Hut years ago with a young lady who came from the MBA program at the University of Indiana. And I said, so tell me about what you look for in a manager. What kind of style do you look for? And she said, Mark, it's a great question. I'm looking for a coach who runs with the team, not just someone who sits on the bleachers with a stopwatch barking out split times and orders, but I want a coach that actually runs with the team. And I thought that was so insightful. She ended up getting hired. To this day, she's one of my good friends. And I just never forgot that conversation during our interview. And so it let me say, if that's a management style that she prefers, how can I be that coach that runs with the team? How can I make sure that
Mm.
I would be willing to do anything that I ask any number of them to do? And if I do that, and if I come alongside them, say, how can I help you? What do
Yeah.
you need from me? Are there barriers that I need to break down with other people in a different department? Or do you need additional skills and resources that you may not have? How can I help you get them? What do you need from me to do your very best for all of us so that we grow together?
I really like that, and just that's a really good. I'm gonna remember that, a coach who runs with the team, and just that really sticks with me too. It's a very powerful way to put it. And when it comes to, like, you also mentioned this concept of leaving a living legacy. So what does that look like? Like, I want to learn how to do that because that sounds really intriguing to me personally too.
Well, first of all, I will tell you, you're already doing it. Okay. The way you coach people with your skills and abilities on LinkedIn and what you are most passionate about, you're helping all these people who have their own purposes and you're helping them accomplish them. So right now, Mindy Rosser is leaving a living legacy.
Mm,
It's not like you waited till the end of your career and said, well, now here are the tablets from on high. You're doing it by showing up every single day with a smile and with a passion, a burning passion for
mhm.
what you care deeply about and you teach so beautifully. So I just bat it back to you and say,
Ah,
look in the mirror. Okay. But that's what it is. It's showing up
right.
every day and it's being of service. And when you do
Ah,
that, you're creating what I call a virtuous cycle of reciprocity or paying it backward. Right.
okay.
So I kind of get there by thinking deeply at things that people look at on the surface and just accept. I don't do
Hmm.
that.
Yeah.
So people think of paying it forward.
Yes.
Well, when I'm in Starbucks in line in the drive through, I will almost always, as long as there's a car behind me, pay for the car behind me. I can't physically pay it forward because that car is
True.
left. So
Yep.
I pay it backward. And I found that when I do that, it often creates a chain reaction, which is part of the law of reciprocity, is people that have something good done to them tend to want to do likewise, and in some cases, even with greater measure. So now you've created this virtuous cycle of reciprocity where you're paying it backward for the benefit of others. And that's how you leave a living legacy.
Ah, that is powerful, and I like that concept of paying it backward. I think it comes out beautifully in the way that paying for the person behind you versus you can't do it for the person in front of you. I'm like, "Oh, now I wanna go to Starbucks." It's like, "I wanna
Yes.
try this. I wanna start a virtuous cycle." So I think that's a really good challenge, and just thinking through the process and the effect of that and, the power of how that can impact the person behind you and behind them and how it could keep going, and I think that's incredible. When it comes to okay, I was reading in your book, kind of I want to hear about your epiphany with the leaf. Like you have a story in your
Yes.
book about how did you come up with the leaf growth model and just tell us the story about the leaf.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because that really is the foundation for how this book ever got conceived. And it
Yeah.
was with this epiphany that happened on the morning after the day that I got unceremoniously let go as the president of a pretty large casual dining chain. And the new owners had come in and basically said, we'll take it from here. When they had originally promised that myself and my executive team would stay in place because that's why they bought the brand. But
Ooh.
they very quickly came in and said, we've decided to move in a different direction. And I said, what, over the weekend? The deal closed on a Friday. On Monday morning at 8:05, I'm out the door. Only it would have been 8:01, except for I had 4 minutes of questions, and I couldn't get my jaw off the floor to ask them fast enough. So it was a major turnaround with this brand. We were down double-digit negatives in sales, and I came in thinking that, oh, as a young leader, I'm reading all this stuff, and I come across this thing called the Rule of Threes. And it basically says that we can kind of, our brains can accept three major things and we need to keep it to three. And that's the most powerful thing. And matter of fact, that makes for the best TED Talks and whatnot. I actually heard it on a Dodge Ram truck commercial like last year. So it's a thing. And so I've been saying, well, okay, what are the three things we should focus on? And I said, leadership, engagement, and accountability. Strong leadership, up and down the organization, because guess what? We're all leaders. If you influence the thoughts or
Mm,
feelings or actions of another human being, you're a leader. So I made it clear that leadership was going to be very important in this turnaround. Engagement, people had to be committed with their heart, head, hands, and habits. This was not going to be easy. You got to be
mhm,
all in. And then finally, accountability. At the time, we were part of a publicly traded company, and our division wasn't holding its end of the bargain. And so we had to have personal accountability to show up every day and do our jobs to the best of our ability. But we also had to have accountability to our team members. Live up to your commitments to one another. And so I use that in all of my emails. And back then we did group voicemails. I wove it into our recognition and reward program. I would send out specific examples of how Mindi demonstrated a deeper level of engagement with their team, or how Mark held his team accountable when we did this promotion, and look at the results. And all of it was around leadership, engagement, accountability. Well, the next morning when I got up, this was in Southern California, and it was February 21st. It was 2013. I remember it well. And in Southern California, as you probably know a little bit, having now lived in Hawaii, spring comes a little earlier than it does in some of the eastern parts of the country, northern parts of the country. So I take the dog out. I'm after a fitful night of sleep, and I'm like, so that just happened. And as God is my witness, Mindi, the sun came over the wall in our backyard, and we had a fig tree that was barren from the 6 or 7 or 8 weeks of winter that we do get. And it was in that moment, the sun shone on the end of one branch, this little tiny green sprig of a green leaf that was just about to bud. And I got the epiphany in that moment. A couple things. One, the leaf is a symbol of growth and rebirth. Every plant, every tree grows through its leaf. I remember that from high school science. And I'm taking the dog in. I go to my computer and I start banging out this treatment that a leaf is a symbol of growth and rebirth. But then I also got to thinking, wait a minute, I was missing the F. It's actually an acronym, which stands for leadership, engagement, accountability, and fulfillment. What I was missing in leading my team was fulfillment myself and fulfillment in my team. We were burning the candles at both ends. We were chasing numbers just to chase numbers. We were doing this heroic effort, all to be summarily dismissed with a new organization who bought us and said, we'll take it from here. And so I now look at LEAF in a different way. I think of the L as leadership. And if you think about that fig tree, it's that seed and root system that you have to have for any plant or tree, right? Just like you would have for an organization, you have to have strong leadership. And the result of leadership should be alignment. And then engagement represents the trunk, the branches, and the system of nourishment, because if you just have leadership, you'll have a stump. So you need the trunk, the branches, and the system of nourishment, which is called savia. In Spanish, that translates to lifeblood. What's the lifeblood of any organization? It's people. So you have to have people who are engaged with their heart, head, hands, and habits. That leads to the outcome of empowerment. We know that empowered people are better at their jobs. They stay longer. They are more committed. They have a stake in the ownership. But then you have to then say, well, what is that tree meant to be? A fig tree only knows how to be a fig tree, right? So it bears fig leaf and bears fig fruit. And so the accountability of any organization is, well, what do you stand for? And how do you measure it? And what happens when there are obstacles or outliers that can help you be better at what you're doing, and innovation that can help you avoid obsolescence? Well, the goal of the accountability module is achievement. And then finally, fulfillment represents the ecosystem, the soil, the sun, the rain that creates that nurturing environment for that fig tree to bear the most leaves and to bear the most figs. Just like in any organization, you have to have a nurturing environment, a culture that allows a diverse group of individuals to be the very best they can be and to work together to achieve their goals. So I then got this idea of this 4-circle Venn diagram, because I no longer believed in the rule of threes. I now believe in the higher power of fours. When you think about it, there are 4 seasons, not 3. There are 4 directions, not 3. There are 4 chambers to the human heart, not 3. There are 4 elements to an atom, the source of all life, not 3. And I could go on and on with this foreplay, but you get the idea. And then why it's a revolutionary concept is because, like the 4 seasons, thank God, spring comes around every year. And if you were to cut open a tree at the end of its life, you would see tree rings representing each year of its life. And they're in different shapes. And some may be burnt because there could have been a fire. There could have been things that happened during the life of that tree. But if it has a strong root system and it gets regularly nourished, and if it bears fruit, and if it is in that environment that allows it to grow and thrive, it will live a long and prosperous life on purpose.
Mm. I really like that. Thank you for explaining the leaf model and where it came from too, because I'm like, that is such, and the timing of it, I'm like, it was meant to happen. Serendipity, as some would call it, or fate, or however
Yeah.
you want to say it. But I think it's fascinating and just how you came, first of all, how you came up with it. I think that is really interesting. And just the story and context. I think that
Mhm.
definitely adds another layer of depth to it. And then curious, like when it comes to implementing this model inside of an organization, or maybe we start with ourselves, like is how do you go about getting started with that? And how does somebody say, hey, this sounds really interesting. I would like to implement this model for myself or for my team.
Yeah, it's a great question, Mindy. And I should have ended with the living legacy. Part of that model is that those who bear the most fruit have the opportunity, and I'll say the responsibility for scattering the most seeds.
Oh,
We are all put on this life as organisms, whether we're a plant, a animal, or a human being, to grow, thrive, and reproduce. And so this is an opportunity for all of us to uh, pay it backwards and help others along their growth journey. So where do you start? Well, you start at the very beginning. There's a lot of talk, and rightfully so, about the power of purpose. And a lot of times people think it's a noun, like it's a thing that I gotta go find. When I use the word purposeful, that's why it's called the Purposeful Growth Revolution, because if you're purposeful and you're growing into your purpose, it may not reveal itself until years later, as it did for me. But there are telltale signs of your purpose in your life if you'll take the time and do the work and really understand, starting with who you serve. And then all of a sudden, when you start to kind of plot out from each of those four categories, spiritual, relational, personal, and professional, you then will say, okay, who do I count on and who counts on me? And then you take it a next step and you say, okay, well, what am I really good at? What do I enjoy doing and learning about? What do I, believe the universe needs from me? And then how do I get paid for all the above? And I think you start to map that out. And then all of a sudden you'll say, well, ironically, I went to college originally to be a lawyer. I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. And thank God I'm not. But I had a professor in a marketing class because I ended up getting into the School of Journalism because there is no such thing as a pre-law major. So you have to major in something and then apply for law school.
Mhm.
And so I said, well, what would be the types of things that I'll need to learn in law
Mhm.
school and to be a good lawyer that I can kind of get going in undergrad? And a lot of people will say poli sci or history or this and that. I'm like, well, that doesn't sound right to me. And they said, well, there's another opportunity through the School of Journalism because what you're going to be doing in law school is a lot of reading, a lot of writing, a lot of critical thinking, a lot of research, and a lot of presentations. And that's what you're going to be doing as a lawyer. So you might want to think about it. So I did, and I got into the School of Journalism just to kind of check those boxes.
Yeah.
But I had a professor who came alongside me and said, hey, Mark, you're pretty good at this marketing stuff. Have you thought about going to business school instead of law school? And at the time I hadn't, because I'm a goal-oriented guy.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
here's a person who took time out to meet with me and mentor me. And so I ended up going to graduate school. I went to the University of Kansas undergraduate, and I went to Northwestern for graduate school, where I believe they have the best integrated marketing communications program in the world. And I said, if I'm going to do it the best, I want to study from the best. And I had an opportunity to listen to a mentor who took time out to coach and guide me. And I wouldn't be here without him, so much so that I established a endowment in his name at the University of Kansas for the Dr. Tim Bankston Professor Mentor Award through the journalism school. And so each year it's given out as nominated by students and former students. And so that's my way of paying it backward because of what role he played in my life and career that I wouldn't. And so there's not a connected dots painting. Everybody's different. But I think if you kind of really get introspective and understand kind of who you serve And then you take it further and go into what really lights me up. What do I enjoy doing? And what do I do really well? Because it could be I enjoy playing golf, but I don't do it very well. So I'm not going to be a pro golfer. So you got to do it pretty well. And then you got to look at, well, how can you serve the world? What does the world need from you? And then finally, how do you get paid doing all that? And there are tons of opportunity to do that so people can be fulfilled at work and look at your life's work as if you were a painter doing a masterpiece
Okay.
or a musician writing a tremendous piece of music. I love the movie. It's probably well before your time, called Mr. Holland's Opus. And it was so cool because this guy just wanted to be um, a great musician, and he was writing this kind of major magnum opus. And life got in the way. And he was an instructor in Portland in high school where they were taking funding away, and he didn't feel like he could realize his dreams. And I just think about how he got to the end of his career. And then when he did, I'm going to give the benefit of the end of the movie because it brings tears to my eyes even talking about it. He's leaving with his son and his wife, taking his little box of personal effects out of his office, and they're going to the car, and he's walking away in retirement. Well, he says, well, I think you need to come in here. And he's like, what? And they take him into the auditorium where the whole place is filled with all of the school, and on stage are kids he taught that are now playing this music that he had written all his life, and they're playing his opus. And I just thought, how cool would that be to get to the end of my career and have a similar type of thing, or the end of my life, or whatever happens first, and have that same kind of thing. And so leaving a living legacy, you're talking to people that years later, they'll say, Mindi, I remember when you sat with me and said such and such, or you coached me on such and such. And you'll go, I don't remember that. But you made a difference in someone's life that they remember, that helped them along their growth journey. So that's a long-winded way of kind of answering your question, but I think it's important for your listeners to know that, there's a ancient Chinese saying, and it says there are two best times to plant a tree. And you'd think, oh, that's easy. Spring, fall? No.
Yeah.
The first best time to plant a tree would have been 20 years ago, because today we would then be able to sit underneath it, enjoy its shade or its fruit. But the second best time to plant a tree is today. So the point is, don't wait another day to be disgruntled at what you're doing at work, to look at it as some kind of means to an end, and then you'll go live what the other 30% of your life, because we spend over 30% working and 30% sleeping. So you just want to be fulfilled for 30% of your life, or maybe you could say, I can get that to 60.
Yeah. Wow. That's powerful. And just that story, now I want to go watch the movie. I've never seen the movie,
Oh,
so
it's
now I
great.
have to go see it. Yeah, I definitely have to add it to my list. Um, it really struck me too when you were talking about finding your purpose. I feel like so many people are kind of lost in that process. And I think those questions you gave about being introspective, and then also the advice of a mentor, and just like getting somebody else's perspective. So I think between the two, it sounds like that is a really good combination for people who are struggling to kind of figure out what their purpose is, and what direction to go next. When it comes to people who are kind of like in that messy place, what advice would you give them, like as they're trying to figure this out? Like, can they just like follow? You said it's not a connect the dots, that they have to kind of go through that process, but I think some words of wisdom while people are doing that introspective work, because it can feel very, I've been through it multiple times, and it can feel very disconcerting, and sometimes you don't know what's up or down.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And so the first thing I would say is give yourself grace.
Mm,
There is no finish line, and the only starting line is when you decide to get started. Now, the second thing I'll say, back to the connect the dots and kind of anti-connect the dots, is the great Pablo Picasso, the painter, who said, innovation exists, but it must find you working. You got to put in the work. It's
yeah.
not going to just happen. You may get an epiphany like I did,
Mm,
and that could very well happen. But I knew the seeds of my purpose were planted years ago. I've been in restaurants and hospitality and retail and entertainment, and I gravitated towards those um, because years ago my first job was a lifeguard. And
Yeah.
I got to thinking that, I was teaching lessons, I was coaching the swim team, I was cleaning the pool, I was then manager. So I'm handling money, I'm handling, people, I'm setting schedules. But it was all the above was about serving others. And so
Mhm.
that was woven into me early on. And
Mhm.
so I believe everybody has a chance to be introspective and, get out a good old fashioned number two pencil
Yeah.
if you want, and writing things down. There's lot of people who do journaling.
Yep.
That's a good way of getting your thoughts on paper. I love what you said about asking other people who are close to you. Um, Good reason is um, a gentleman named Noel Upham. When I was director of sales planning and promotion at J.C. Penney, and he was on my agency team, he said, Mark, as I've watched you, you are most inspired and passionate about the things the causes that you have. And I got to thinking, I wrote down those words. And those four words are now part of my personal brand. And
Ah,
another person got me there because I'm not sure I would have gotten there on my own. So I put together a purposeful brand, mission statement, and a purpose statement. My purpose statement is I don't want to just make money and retire. I want to make a difference and inspire. And that means making a difference in the lives of others and inspiring them to want to do likewise. And that's what gets me up every day. But I didn't just wake up one day and write that down. It takes that introspection. It takes the work that you put into it. It takes asking people. And the people that love you want you to succeed. And sometimes they'll be honest with you, and maybe it might hurt. Or maybe they'll, better yet, uncover a hidden superpower that they see you as having that you don't notice yourself.
that is such a good point. And I can think back because you were talking about mentors and people that pointed things out to you along the way. And I remember there was a partner that I had worked with for, let's say, I think about 7 years. And about at that 7 year mark, she goes, Mindy, you just have a knack for marketing. And it was in that moment, like coming from her, she is not like the type to just throw out compliments. And in that moment, I was like, oh, okay. Just kind of like embrace this because it's getting that feedback from others. Sometimes we get so caught up in our heads or what's not working and we just don't hear it or don't see it or don't even value it. And I think really understanding that and seeing ourselves through other people's lenses can be really, really helpful and also help us get a little bit more clarity and kind of lean into things versus like, I'm kind of good at this, kind of good at that. I don't really know. But sometimes when we're stuck, I feel like that's definitely been helpful for me.
Yeah, and thinking of stuck, I have this other model that's called FUD. And
Yes.
I think we often get stuck in the FUD. And
Okay.
that stands for fear, uncertainty, doubt, and delay. So fear of failure, what will they think? And it could be, someone close to you. I want to leave my corporate job and I want to do this e-learning gig or consulting gig or whatever it is. And someone going, oh, you don't want to do that. So you're like, I'm afraid of what people will think if I really chase what I'm after. I'm afraid of even, failing or even the thought of failing. And so that tends to lead to uncertainty. Am I willing to give up my unsatisfying status quo to chase my dream, what I really feel called to do? And then that then tends to lead to doubt. Then the imposter syndrome comes in. Well, isn't success for other people? Maybe I don't have my stuff together and everybody else seems to. And it leads to, the imposter syndrome and kind of those background voices that we all hear from time to time
Mhm.
that we're not worthy or we're not good enough or we're not qualified. Who wants to hear from us? And
Yeah.
then, of course, all three of those things lead to delay. Who wants to deal with all that? We'll put it aside and go get a shot of dopamine somewhere. And, and we'll deal with that later.
Yeah.
So I found the antidote to FUD is that faith can overcome fear. Faith in what you believe in your heart. And think about many stories in the Bible of people that relied on faith to overcome certain death situations. And, if they can do it, then we can all do it as well. And then I believe hope can overcome uncertainty. A lot of people say, oh, hope's not a strategy. Well, it's not a strategy in and of itself. It has to have action. But having that sense of hope gives us now that guiding star to shoot for, right? Because if we don't have hope, then we're hopeless. And if we have hopelessness, then that's a deep, dark place that is difficult to dig out of. So hope is most definitely a strategy, but it's followed by then belief, which can overcome doubt. Again, belief in yourself, belief that you are worthy, belief that you do have something to offer the world. And then finally, that leads to purposeful action, not just actions, but purposeful action that can overcome the paralysis of delay. So get off the couch, get yourself going and motivated to be the you were meant to be. And that's what it means to grow into your purpose. It's, again, there's no finish line. No one says a tree stops growing at a certain date because that's just its date to retire.
Yeah.
Trees keep growing until they die, right? But they keep bearing leaves and fruit all the while. And we have the opportunity to do that ourselves and make our work meaningful and purposeful so that we can leave a living legacy to help others along their growth journey by scattering our seeds.
I really like that, and just the approach, the faith and the fear to overcoming the fear, because I feel like for me, that's definitely been a tricky one. It's just the fear and the uncertainty. I'm a type of person that really likes certainty, and being an entrepreneur and being part of the gig economy and all of that, you have no certainty, and it's like every month is like every day sometimes can be like full of surprises. They could be good, they could be bad. So it's just kind of like, well, I guess it's how you attribute to they attribute different things to it. So I think it's like, especially for people who are pivoting and really trying to overcome that uncertainty and that doubt when you don't know what's on the other side, what are some words of advice that you have for like getting through that?
Yeah, I think the point I want to make to you and your listeners is I have had to overcome my FUD. If you
Yes.
think it was easy leaving a high paid corporate W-2 position and going into this idea of a solopreneur, well, I don't know if I'm a solopreneur. I have a team of 3, me, myself, and I.
Yeah.
but often we don't agree. So I don't know. That's another story. It was then having to write a book, something I've never done, go through the whole publishing process. I've created this self-assessment that goes with the book, which we'll talk about. And then, put together a website and the offshoots of speaking, consulting, and e-learning stuff, that I've never done. So, I find that we're all creatures of habit and we all love comfort, right? But nothing grows in comfort. You know that a grapevine, when it's stressed, it grows sweeter grapes. And so you think about that, and the grapevines have been around for centuries, right? When we're uncomfortable, we tend to rally and grow or wither and die. Now, there's another model in the book that tells you how to go from FUD to achieve what you want, and it's called the turn model. And it's based on the idea that you need to be teachable. You start by being teachable, being humble that you don't know what you don't know, and learning all you can. So I had to learn all I could about writing a book. I remember when I was at Pizza Hut years ago, and I'm on the marketing team, but I'm handling kind of more advertising communications, and we started to get into promotions in a different way. And David Novak, who was our leader at the time, and saw something in me. He said, "Hey, I want you to come over into this new area we're calling it event marketing, but it was really marketing, promotion, and licensing." And I didn't want to do it because it's not what I thought I was made to do. And yet he persisted and won, as he always seemed to do. And then I went on to learn everything I could about it, and then went in to run 2 different promotion agencies, was a longtime board member of the Promotion Marketing Association, and then ultimately chairman. And so all of those things happened that maybe wouldn't have happened had I not been humble enough to be teachable.
Mm.
And then you have to be, like I just said, willing to be uncomfortable. Whoa, wait a minute. I can be teachable, but I'm not sure I want to go through uncomfortable. Well, I talk in the book about how you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable and know that it's just for a season. When we learn new things, let's say you get promoted, you have to learn new things. And so you're happy for the promotion, but you're like, oh crud, now I've got to grow into this role because I'm now going to be compensated based on that role and I'm going to be evaluated based on that role. So learning new things often means you've got to be uncomfortable. Well, then you got to be responsible. You got to own it, right? The good, the bad, and the ugly, and say, however this turns out, I own it. And then finally, N stands for no return. If you've heard the story of Cortez and the conquering of Mexico, the famous exhortation to his troops were burn the boats. We're either going to win this war or die trying. And you have to have a no return mentality. If you really want to achieve something, when things get tough, you can't turn back. You got to lean into it and keep moving forward. And then I put an exclamation mark on the end of turn. And it's because I feel like our time is short and we need to understand that the exclamation stands for a sense of urgency, but it also is a point of emphasis and of what's really important to us when we put that exclamation mark on something. And so if it's worthwhile or worth doing, you got to be teachable, willing to be uncomfortable, responsible to own your actions and the outcomes, and then have a no return, burn the boats mentality, and do it with a sense of urgency and emphasis, prioritizing it above other things so that you can ultimately achieve your goal, whatever it is.
Wow, I really like the burning of the ships and just being reminded of that story. Just an example of when I have done that in my life. When we moved here to Hawaii, that's exactly how it felt, like packing up all of our stuff. I'm originally from like Chicagoland. It's like I had never been here. I had no idea. Like I did my research, I did all of that, but it still was like a really big risk, but we were willing to take it based on, the research that we did. But having that mentality like, all right, here we go. All our stuff is, going to be on a boat and we are going no matter what happens and we will see what happens. But I think it's scary, but it's also exciting. I think like the flip side of
Yeah.
purposeful growth and change is this is exciting times. Like you actually get to chart your own life instead of just like living your lifestyle by like default. You actually get to choose what you want to grow into. Like what type of tree do you want to become? How strong do you want to be? And these are all opportunities that you are presented with. And so I think it's so good just how you are kind of leading us through just the different steps and how to navigate this next area of growth as we're going along.
Yeah. And again, Mindy, you're a great example. What you just shared with us, your story is what I'm talking about.
Mm.
Although I will say, if you live in Chicago, as I have a couple of times, the idea of going to Hawaii is not a really hard stretch. But still,
No.
moving everything, several hours away, and a lot of water in between, I get it. And then going into your profession and what you do, you could be used as the example for every one of those elements. So I'm inspired by you, and I'm really proud and honored that you've chosen me to share a little bit about my story with you and your listeners. But you were dead on, and I just really enjoy working with you and the value that you have brought to me in helping me learn LinkedIn. You can teach an old dog new tricks if you stay humble and you ask questions and you show up and you participate. Usually good things happen. And that's why I go back to Pablo Picasso, who says invention is evident, but you must, it must find you working. It's all around us, but it must find you working. And so this idea of being a lifelong learner is really important as well. And I believe that growth happens, like I said, you know, all of our days, all of our years, and we're always going to be able to be refreshed when we learn new things and
Yeah.
find new ways to use the gifts that we've all been given and get off that linear treadmill and get into this more integrated world that is all about who we serve. And when we're of service to people, again, usually good things happen.
Oh, that is so good. And I think just kind of coming back to the who we serve, like I really want to go back to just my plans and like my mission statement. I have a what I call a massively transformative purpose, which is very similar to like what you were describing as your mission statement, but it is about like creating content and inspiring people to live a lifestyle by design. Like to me, that's really, really important. And that can be lived out in so many different ways, like professionally, in personal relationships and such. But it's always been this guiding light. I think whenever I'm coming to a decision, like looking at that, does it match up to my mission and my purpose? And again, like what you said with the who you serve, like is this going to help my people? And like seeing it through that lens, it also is, it's unselfish in a way, but it's also, it's very gratifying because you know that you are living it out on a day to day, on a week to week, like month after month, you are continuing to deliver. And it's really nice when you get like little bits of feedback here and there, like somebody mentions like, oh, you helped me today. And it could be something very tiny, very small, but it's looking for those. I kind of like if you've read the what is the name of that book, The Omens. I'm blanking. The Alchemist,
Mm.
where he talks about the omens, like you're kind of looking for the omens and signs that you're on the right path, kind of like those little pebbles. I think that is also really important and kind of helps us, you know, stay motivated, especially when, you know, our motivation may be waning sometimes or it gets really tough and we're trying to make it through those hard times.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I agree with you. And, I think that, what you said about the, the mission statement, and we talk a lot about, well, companies have mission statements, but
Yeah.
we all are all a brand. We
Yep.
are a personal brand. And why wouldn't we take the same advice that those of us who grew up in marketing give to the brands we serve to help us grow as
Hmm.
people? So that's why I say, get out your pencil or pen or do it digitally, you youngsters, um, and try to figure those things out, because I hope you are hearing me. I'm not saying leave your corporate job, it's toxic work
Right.
environment, and go work somewhere else and go be you. I'm saying you be you within the corporate environment.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you got to know who you are and what you stand for and what you won't stand for. And you have to be willing to communicate that with your leader. And if they're truly a leader, they will listen to you. And their ears are a lot clearer now as a result of this great resignation, which I call the great repurposing, in this kind of post COVID murky world that we're wading through. But when you think about it, major step function change opportunities, growth opportunities often happen as a result of catalytic events.
Mhm.
COVID, right?
Yep.
Or could be a war, could be famine, could be an innovation, such as the smartphone, or anything that's probably happened in the last 10 years that most people would never have dreamed of back in the days of 1984, and what we thought was this whole rage of the future, or 2001 Space Odyssey, right? And now here we are in 2022, and we can literally use the same power in a smartphone that they used back when they first sent a man to the moon. Is the same power that they had all these machines and everything was tied to this and that. Well, yet today, in the hands of all of us, we have the same power that it could have taken to get someone to the moon, right? So step function change growth can happen in a company, and it can happen in your life if you use this growth opportunity wisely and use it to build yourself up and grow your personal brand and be transparent and open and honest with yourself and vulnerable with yourself as well.
Yeah.
And if you are able to do that, then you're going to be able to, I think, be armed with achieving your richly imagined future, whatever and however you define it.
Like that. Like, however you define it.
Yes.
Because to me, it's like it is about that autonomy and just you have the choice. And I think that's what you keep emphasizing. You get to choose and to take responsibility. And also, I think I really liked also what you just said about within your organization. You know, if you're inside, not everybody needs to go be a part of the gig economy or start their own
Right.
businesses. And I think too many people feel that pressure that that's the only option, not realizing that maybe just one conversation with their boss would change everything, and they could be incredibly happy on that team, inside that organization. Not everybody has, cut out or even wants to be an entrepreneur and go through that. And some people, like, we need strong leaders inside of our
Yes.
organizations. So I think it's just really figuring that out.
Well, I think we do, because I will tell you that in my experience, businesses have an opportunity to change the world more so than governments or religious institutions. You think
Mm.
about the number of people that are employed and the resources of companies all over the world, which is why I've joined an organization as a senior leader uh, called Conscious Capitalism. And it's based on a book that was written by John Mackey and Raj Sisodia years ago. John was the co-founder and co-CEO of Whole Foods. And he basically came up with this mantra that I believe in wholeheartedly. And it's about elevating humanity through business.
Ooh, love
And I
that.
just love that. That resonates with me because, again, I want to leave the world better than when I found it. And I feel like a lot of us of a certain age have had a lot of great benefits. And unfortunately, we're also the cause of some of the issues that have happened and issues that we're faced with, and whether we want to believe it or not. And so wouldn't you want to be able to work for an organization that cared more than just about bottom line profit? Wouldn't you want to work for an organization that was consciously capital in its capitalism, and elevated humanity through its business practices? That to me would be an organization I'd want to work for, and one that I would be personally engaged in and feel a sense of ownership in and a sense of purpose in. So it's happening, it's out there, and some companies don't take credit for the great organizations that they are and the purposeful organizations that they are. And some of them are well known, and they're not patting themselves on the back at all. But we study Patagonia,
Hmm.
and I just got an email not that long ago from Canva thanking me for helping them fulfill their growth. They're now a $40 billion organization, and they give a ton of money back to local communities. Target's been doing it since 1957, giving 5% of their uh, profit back to local communities around every one of their stores. Some people know that, some people don't know that.
Oh,
And so people are doing good things, but not enough. And
yeah.
the other thing I'm frustrated by is that this idea of capitalism is getting a bad name. And
Mm.
even among MBA students, a study just was released in the Washington Post a few weeks ago, that here you would think, people in liberal arts would say that, but these are people getting their MBA who are saying that the idea of capitalism is gone horribly wrong. So the idea of
Mhm.
conscious capitalism is a way to rescue that and let people know that you can do well by doing good.
Mhm. Yeah, I think in reinforcing that and just looking for organizations, and if you aren't inside of one, can you affect that change from inside?
Yes.
Sometimes, some people can, like, depending on your role and what your capabilities are, and other times it does, require a bit of a shift, in looking for an organization that is more aligned. So this has been an awesome discussion. Thank you so much, Mark. Like,
Oh, my
it's
pleasure.
so talk about your book. I've been so excited. Like, I've heard murmurings, like, it kept me posted on when it's coming. I'm like, when is it coming? When is it coming? So to have this conversation, so
Yeah.
grateful. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. And for those people who do want to learn more about you, you also mentioned your resource, like your assessment. And where should people go to find you and to talk with you and learn more about your book and your work?
Yeah, I'd say the couple places. One is LinkedIn. Um,
Okay.
you've helped me update my profile, and I'm very proud of the work that I put in. But it was based on
Mhm.
your coaching, and I would recommend you to anybody. So go to my LinkedIn, and you can either follow me or, better yet, connect with me. And that way, you can get we can get acquainted, as well as you can see a newsletter that I put out each month, which I call Seeds for Growth. Go figure, or on my website, which is markamears.com. That's Mark A and then Mears, Mears. And there you'll find all the information about the book, the self-assessment. It doesn't take more than 5, 6, 7 minutes. I say at 10, but it's less than that. but it'll start you on your journey of self reflection. And it will ask you questions about how you feel about purposeful growth, and then about your purposeful self, and then about growing you forward for purposeful work, and then about scattering your seeds for purposeful life.
Oh, that's awesome. Because I think just following up on this, I think a lot of listeners, viewers are going to really want to take action. And I think that assessment is a great next action. If you really liked what you heard today, go take that assessment. I'm going to take it. I'm really excited. It's like this is topic
Yeah,
right up my alley. So I'm really excited
cool.
to take it. And thank you again, Mark, for being here today. Again, please connect with Mark, follow him. His work is awesome. I love his LinkedIn newsletter. So make sure to check it out and subscribe to that as well. And I hope to have you again, Mark, to keep us posted on your goings and comings. And we would love to have you on the show sometime. So thank you again
Awesome.
for being here today.
Thank you, Mindy. I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to staying in touch.
Thanks, everyone.